My friend, have you ever felt that in today's world everything around us is moving so fast, with our phones buzzing constantly, bills piling up, deadlines pressing, and relationships quietly breaking under the weight of pressure? And in the middle of all this endless noise, we find ourselves asking a simple but heavy question. What is the real point of all this? And while we keep looking for answers in new books, podcasts, and endless social media posts, sometimes the truths we are looking for are not new at all, but are hidden in ancient parables that might sound like dusty old stories told by grandmothers and forgotten by the modern world. Yet if we pause long enough, we discover that those stories were written for people exactly like us. People who were searching for peace, direction, and meaning. One such parable tells of a lone traveler, wandering lost in a desert, dehydrated and exhausted, who by sheer grace stumbles upon a small spring of water, and as he drinks, life flows back into his body, his spirit revives, and gratitude fills his heart. So he decides to fill his flask and carry it along for the journey. But as he continues walking under the burning sun, he comes across another traveler collapsing from thirst. And though his own flask is not full, he offers what he has to the stranger, believing that another's life is worth more than his fear of scarcity. And later, when he himself finally collapses from exhaustion, he is rescued and carried to safety by villagers who recognize him as the man who gave his last water away. Now at first, this may sound like just another moral tale about kindness, but if we lean in and listen closely, we realize that it whispers something deeper, something our modern world desperately needs to hear. That what we freely give away often returns to us in multiplied forms, and that survival alone is not the highest goal of life, because true life, meaningful life, begins when we share even when we fear we don't have enough. And when we think about our own modern lives here in America, where the culture often tells us to hustle harder, collect more, climb higher, and protect what's ours, we begin to see how easy it is to forget that the soul does not grow through competition, but through compassion. And so I ask you, when was the last time you paused to help a coworker struggling quietly on a project, or gave a few minutes of your busy day to listen deeply to a friend drowning in loneliness, or even smiled at a stranger in the grocery line, a smile that might have been the only kindness they received that day? This parable invites us to practice generosity not as a rare occasion, but as a daily rhythm, and one way to begin is to choose one small generous act each day, perhaps sending encouragement to someone online, perhaps carrying groceries for a neighbor, perhaps giving time to a child who just wants to be heard. And instead of constantly asking, "What do I gain from this?" we learn to ask, "How can I add value here?" And as we end each day, we might write down one moment where someone else's generosity sustained us, because this keeps us aware that we live in an invisible circle of giving and receiving that sustains life itself. My dear friend, the parable of the traveler in the desert is not just about springs and water. It is about you and me. It is about those quiet yet defining moments when life presents us with a choice. Will we cling tightly to our last drop out of fear? Or will we trust that by giving we open the door to miracles? And in a world that constantly tells us to protect ourselves and look out only for our own interests, these ancient stories gently whisper the opposite truth. Look out for each other, because in doing so you will find your own life renewed. So the next time you feel you are down to your last ounce of energy, your last bit of hope, or your last drop of kindness, remember that the very act of giving may be the hidden miracle that saves you, and in that moment you
will understand that these old parables are not dusty relics at all, but living maps, waiting for us to unlock them, so that we may finally live fully in this modern world. And if this story touched something inside you, share it with someone who might need a little hope today, because generosity is not just about water in the desert, it's about carrying light into each other's darkness. And next time, I will unlock another parable that reveals why chasing happiness so often leaves us miserable, and how turning toward meaning instead can finally set us free. My friend, there is an old parable about a water bearer who carried 2 large pots, one perfectly whole and the other cracked along the side, and each day he walked down to the river, filled both pots with water, and carried them back to the master's house. But by the time he arrived, the cracked pot had leaked half of its water and felt ashamed of its brokenness, thinking itself useless and unworthy, until one day it confessed its sorrow to the water bearer, who gently smiled and said, "Have you noticed the path where I carry you? On your side of the path, flowers bloom, because I knew of your crack and I planted seeds along the way, and each day as you leaked, you watered them. And now the master's house is filled with their beauty because of you." And in that moment, the cracked pot realized that its very flaw had created unexpected beauty. Now in our modern lives, especially here in America where perfection is sold to us every day, perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect homes on social media, it is easy to forget that the cracks in our own lives, the flaws we try to hide, may actually be watering unseen seeds. And perhaps the very places we think are failures are the places where life's greatest beauty is quietly growing. So the lesson of the cracked pot is this: your value does not come from being flawless. It comes from what flows through you, even in your brokenness. And sometimes the world needs your imperfection more than your perfection. And when you begin to see your cracks as conduits of unexpected grace, shame loses its grip and life begins to bloom again.
There is a timeless story of a young son who demanded his inheritance, left home, and wasted it all on reckless living until famine struck, and he found himself hungry, broken, and feeding pigs just to survive. And in his lowest moment, he realized that even the servants in his father's house lived better than this. So he chose to return, ashamed and ready to beg for forgiveness. But before he could even reach the door, his father ran to him with open arms, celebrating his return rather than condemning his failure. And in that embrace, the son discovered that home was not a place of judgment, but of unconditional love. And when we hear this story today, in a modern world where so many feel disconnected from family, faith, and even from themselves, it reminds us that no matter how far we wander, no matter how many mistakes we make, there is always a home waiting for us. Whether that home is a person who still loves us, a community that welcomes us back, or even a deeper home within our own soul where forgiveness and peace can be found. So if you feel lost, if you feel you've gone too far to return, remember this parable. The door of home is never locked, and the arms of love are always wider than the weight of your mistakes.
There is a story told about a tiny mustard seed, so small it seems almost invisible. Yet when planted in the earth, it grows into one of the largest trees, spreading wide branches where birds build their nests. And the lesson hidden in this parable is that great transformations often begin with the smallest of actions. In our fast-paced modern lives, where success is measured in big achievements, big paychecks, big followers, we forget that small beginnings are not failures but seeds. And when you decide to call a loved one today, or read just one page of a book, or set aside 10 minutes for prayer or meditation, those small acts, repeated faithfully, become roots that anchor you and branches that shelter others. So the mustard seed whispers to us, never underestimate the small, for inside it lies the possibility of greatness. And when you honor the little steps, life will surprise you with how tall your tree becomes. There was once a man traveling a lonely road who was beaten and left half dead by thieves. And though several respected men passed by, unwilling to help, a stranger from a different community, someone despised and rejected by society, stopped, bound the man's wounds, carried him to safety, and paid for his care. And this parable reveals that true compassion is not about who deserves help, but about who is willing to give it. In modern America, where divisions of race, politics, wealth, and religion often split us apart, this story still cuts to the heart, reminding us that kindness must leap over walls, compassion must break through labels, and love must see a human being where others only see a category. And maybe the greatest act we can perform today is to treat the stranger, the outsider, the one different from us, as our neighbor. So the lesson of the Good Samaritan is this: compassion is not selective. It is radical. It is costly. It is inconvenient. But it is the only force strong enough to heal a divided world. My dear friend, these ancient parables are not old tales trapped in books. They are living guides waiting to be unlocked. And when we dare to listen, they speak directly into the struggles of modern life, whether it is generosity in scarcity, finding beauty in imperfection, returning to love after failure, trusting the small beginnings, or choosing compassion across boundaries. And the more we live them, the more we discover that the wisdom of the past is not outdated but timeless, carrying us toward a life of depth, hope, and meaning.